Thank you so much. Um, uh, Gentlemen, it's an absolute privilege to actually curate this conversation and learn from your uh, phenomenal performances in your respective industries and lives, and talk about a situation and a world where sustainability is becoming not a peripheral conversation. It is becoming an absolute, intricate, and intrinsic conversation. Just the background context. Pakistan recently went through climate-induced floods, and around 30% of Pakistan is underwater at this point of time. Loss of an immense amount of lives, livestock, livelihoods, food security issues. Similar things you can sporadically, and in fact, in a structured way, you're seeing all across the world. There are droughts in the UK. There are wildfires in US and Australia. There are earthquakes happening across the world in the equator belt. And as per United Nations, the SDG gap is between 5 to 7 trillion. And that is just going to grow. And there are fantastic initiatives that are being led across the world in non-OIC countries, as well as countries which are not part of the OIC universe. We're seeing concepts of and performances of ESG, sustainable investments, impact investments, becoming threads in a fabric that is much needed. And this particular conversation can actually dwell upon the role of the Islamic economy, our contribution in the world in terms of demographics, in terms of economic contributions, is significant. The data is all there. We all know about it. But how sustainability, which has been intrinsically part of the Islamic ethos and wider religions as well, can be curated in a more structured manner. There are 4 segments of the society. One, an individual, then there is community, there are institutional, and then there are systemic players and actors who all of us would need to actually create a world that is relevant and that is good for our generations to come. This is not a country-specific conversation. This is not a regional conversation. This is a planetary conversation. And this is an intergenerational conversation. And with this context, I would like the floor to be open first with Professor Dr. Dean Shamsuddin. You have been part of the regulatory side of the country, and you understand this space significantly. How do you see the regulators making sustainability an intrinsic part of the institutional and business side of the world? And where do you think the Islamic countries are lagging, and what are the challenges and opportunities? And if you can actually start with that, that would actually trickle down well in our wider conversation, sir. Over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon all of you, Mr. Moderator and dear friends, distinguished participants. Indeed, I would like to put a disclaimer that I am neither an expert on sustainable development nor on business management. My background is a lecturer, professor on global political Islam at the State Islamic University in Jakarta. So I will touch a little bit on a normative dimension of Islam and also on the objective reality, especially in my country, Indonesia. So our conversation on advancing sustainability with relation to collaboration is indeed crucial, especially if we need to relate sustainable development with the very ideals of Islam, which emphasize very much human dignity, prosperity, and security. Let's see one short chapter in the Holy Quran. That's Surah Quraysh. That Allah the Almighty, the owner of the house of power, who verify gives the society prosperity and guarantee them security. So based on this, I would like to, criticize the idea of developmentalism, which has since the second half of the 20th century become an ideological orientation of the world. Therefore, main ideas that are integrated behind the theory of developmentalism, that there is the notion that the performance of the nation's economy is the central source. Okay. The second tenet of developmentalism, that is the role of the regimes to use their governmental authority to spread out the risks associated with capitalist development. Developmentalism, the third, state bureaucrats become separated from politicians, which allows for the independent and successful development of leadership. And the last one, developmentalism's ideology deal with the idea that it is necessary for nations to utilize the capitalist system as means of advancements in international economy. So based on that, I think from the Islamic point of view, development should be, characterized with meaning. So development with meaning. And SDGs, as we have been observing, to replace the MDGs, are indeed still in line with that world systems, with the idea of developmentalism. So it's not fair to compare the achievement of SDGs in Muslim countries where we have a different point of view. The Muslim world, of course, not exempted from globalization, has not received much benefit. Only a few countries of the 57 OIC members who enjoyed economic growth, like the Gulf countries, while the rest pertain their condition without significant progress. On the one hand, there are the oil-producing countries in the Gulf whose official overseas assets alone are estimated at nearly $2 trillion, while at the same time, some other countries are crowded with people under poverty line, with daily earning less than $2 a day. Okay. It is true that the Muslim world is embedding a paradox between potentiality and actuality, between ideality and reality. Theoretically, the Muslim world has great potential in at least 4 resources: human resources, in the sense of quantitative sense, there are 1.6 or 1.7 billion Muslims in the world, and human natural resources. Many Muslim countries deposit abundant oil, gas, and minerals that are needed by the people on earth. Third, the Muslim world has value resources, which are strong religio-ethical values imperative from the Holy Scripture and pertinent to progress and development. And the fourth, the Muslim world has also, I call it, history resources, that they have had a glorious past. Yet those ideal potential are not manifest in Muslim countries and civilization. I have a data about the index of the GDP, about the academic scientific development in Muslim countries. What are the problems? Why such a happening? In my observation, number one, there is an ability of the Muslim world to manifest religious belief, Islamic beliefs into realities, especially in the field of economy and trade. And number two, I think the role of any political authority in the Muslim world, be it monarchy or republic or others, have not yet, shown their sincerity to bring about the Muslim people in their respective countries. And therefore, collaboration between the government and the civil societies, especially civil Muslims organization in many Muslim countries, have dealt only with the creation of harmony, reconciliation, not in the sense of collaboration in the field of economy and business. In my country, Indonesia, I keep insisting to my government to perform affirmative actions to bring justice in the field of economy. 88% of Muslims, but the role in economy, I think, is very, very minor. So what needs to be done in the future? Number one, in the field of civil society organization in various Muslim countries, I think they need to collaborate in the field of trade. In Indonesia, for example, there is possibility and opportunity for Muslim organizations. There are more than 100 nationwide Islamic organizations, in the sense of that each organization has branches in at a minimum 2/3 of all provinces out of the 34 provinces in the country, to conduct a kind of inter-province trade, or inter-district trade. And we insist, each district to have their own product, one district, one product. And then we begin our collaboration and inter-province or interstate trade. And also the interstate trade between Muslim countries. I think the role of the International Islamic Chamber of Commerce is very vital to encourage this kind of trade. And the last one, I think collaboration between Muslim organization and various Muslim countries. We have begun indeed. I am from the Muhammadiyah. I was chairman of the organization with about 35 million people. We have branches in many countries. We have sister organization in 7 countries. We need to work together with many other Islamic organization or association. But indeed, it depends on the situation, especially with regard to the shift of the World Economic Gravity Center to our region, the emergence of East Asia and the rise of China. And China has begun to create China certain country business corridors. And we need a situation with a peaceful situation in our region, and this is the main obstacle for the Muslim world to conduct, fair trade collaboration with other worlds, and therefore the achievement and index of SDGs in the Muslim country will remain the same in the next few years. Otherwise, there will be change in our world system. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you so much. I think your point to the fact that we need to create a collaborative economy, a collaborative trade as a cornerstone, and then once the livelihood opportunities across the Muslim Ummah is more strengthened, then there would be a very strong effect of that, a trickle down towards the sustainable goals as well. And at a later stage, towards the end, I would love to ask you about the concepts of zakat and waqf, which basically, I mean, these are all those principles of SDG. If you look at it from an Islamic lens, and how we can kind of create a world where coexistence of these concepts and SDGs can actually achieve a better result. But before that, I would like to invite Mr. Ibrahim Patel. And picking up from what Mr. Dean Shamsuddin shared about the collaborative space that needs to kind of be restructured to achieve sustainable goals. Ibrahim, you're from a management consulting background, and you understand the space that ESG is taking towards creating stronger regulations for businesses to operate in a particular country and report. How do you see that transforming the goals of sustainability, and how do you think that the Islamic economy and all the countries in the OIC are looking towards it? Do you think that there is an uptake of it, or you think that there are challenges that still need to be mitigated in order to achieve that kind of a trajectory? Over to you, Ibrahim.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Salamat siang to all my friends, and thank you to KSI for having me on board. Faraz, I must say that you've taken away my presentation in succinctly encapsulating what I was wanting to elaborate on. But let me just start first by talking about the 17 SDGs as they exist, in that their conformity is with Islamic law. So whether we're talking about the elimination of poverty through zakat, which you mentioned for us, or through the waqf, the zero hunger, whether we're talking about good health and well-being, we are told to look after our bodies, whether we are talking about clean water and sanitation, the Prophet ﷺ himself said, don't waste water even if you are on a river, whether we are talking about reducing inequalities, responsible consumption, we are told in the Quran, eat and drink, but waste not by excess. Allah does not love excesses, Surah Al-Araf. Whether we are talking about the injunctions in Surah Al-Rum or Surah Anbiya, which inculcate in us this value of being responsible citizens on an earth and to take care of the environment, to take care of the resources that have been placed for us. So within the span of the SDGs, I would beg the question is, why are Muslim nations not leading and being at the forefront of putting these SDGs into practice and being at the top of the scale? You talk about collaboration and the question around business collaboration. We are told in the Quran, let there be trade amongst you for mutual benefit. Now, if we look at intra-OIC trade, and I'm talking from a perspective, and I have great respect for my friends in the OIC, I'm talking from a perspective of a country that is outside of the OIC, yet I see that trade between intra-OIC is at a very low level compared to trade between other countries. So for instance, in the African context, we have the African Free Trade Agreement, which has just been ratified by majority of the countries in Africa, of which a significant number are in the OIC, yet trade between those countries is at a very minimal level. So collaboration seems to be within the context of an Islamic teaching, is part of our teaching, but in practice, we are not really doing it. And forgive me once again for being frank and being forward in saying that we are really not putting into practice the various teachings that we have within the Quran. In the context of how a Muslim minority community in a secular country, as in South Africa, the Muslim community makes up only 2% of the total population of the country, yet we contribute almost 10% of the national GDP. How has that translated, and what has been the secret to that formula? The Muslim community, if you know, in South Africa, we probably have the highest number of halal certified items in the world. So we produce more halal goods in South Africa than in other Muslim countries. Even multinational non-Muslim companies produce halal goods that are certified by Muslim halal authorities. How did we achieve that? And that is the key, is through the collaboration that we have had amongst not just Muslim businesses, but with Muslim businesses, with non-Muslim businesses, and with government. Today we find, and if we're talking about in the elimination of poverty and the elimination of food hunger, Muslim NGOs are being funded by the secular government to deliver food aid and poverty alleviation in poor villages, because government knows that the corporate governance in those organizations and the transparency and the responsibility is far higher than even in government departments. So they know that the aid that is being provided will reach the recipients far better than government can do it itself. And this has come about because of the word that you put forward for us is the collaboration. If we're talking about how corporate businesses are now moving forward within this framework, we have in South Africa, and previously I was the founder of the Minaro Chamber of Commerce and president of the chamber. We have established collaboration and MOUs with a number of chambers across the globe and have been responsible for bringing together closer ties between the South African business community, not just the Muslim community, but the South African Muslim community and Muslim trading nations across the globe. So in the relationship that we have with the ICCI, with the relationship with the chambers of commerce in various parts of the globe, including in Indonesia, in the Middle East, and in Africa, we've been able to use the relationship and the networking that we have within the community to bring business opportunities to the whole of South Africa. And in that way, it has increased. Recently, our president was in Saudi Arabia to meet with the Saudi government and to talk about investments into South Africa. And that has come about purely because of the relationships that have been sustained over the years through the collaboration that has taken place. So in those short few words, I think that as a nation, as a Muslim nation across the globe, we should be having far greater collaboration. We should be having far greater integration of our thoughts and our ideas, and a far more robust practice of the Islamic tenets. And with those few words, I wish you all well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Brian, thank you so much. I mean, the story you shared with us vis-a-vis South Africa and having a very small minority population and the impact of that in overall trade and the not-for-profit sector in doing good is actually worth a case study. That if in a space where the government is not a Muslim country and a minority of institutions and individuals, how they can curate an environment with trade, sustainability, and impact all is kind of benchmarked at a high level is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. Another point that you shared while you were articulating it was the governance side, that because of the high governance level, the government actually uses Muslim NGOs in disbursement of food. That triggers a point that if you pick up the concepts of impact or sustainable investments or environment and social governance practices, which are deployed by IFCs and the World Banks and the MSCIs of these worlds, they're all, if curated and communicated from the lens of the religious ethos that are integrated in our DNA, I think understanding of that and probably practice of that would actually be more impactful. But that's a brilliant point that you actually left us with. Thank you for that. I would like to invite Mr. Albert Ong to share his views from the development sector side of it. He is the chair of the UNESCAP ESPN Green Economy Task Force, and also the founder and president of World Green Organization. And Albert, how do you see these ethos in the Islamic economies in the light of what UNESCAP has recently launched, which is the Asia Pacific Green Deal with the Green Economic Zone for Green Transformation, which is a global social impact movement? Do you think that interventions and initiatives like these could actually have far-reaching effect towards sustainability? And where do you see that there are challenges and opportunities in terms of having the low-hanging fruits So the OIC and Islamic countries could actually fast track the concepts of sustainability as well as impact and within and intra OIC trade deals as well. Over to you, Albert.
Thank you, Faraz. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my views. In fact, the world is changing drastically, especially, when we all facing the pandemic. So the pandemic is kind of a reset mode for us to really think of the way how we govern the world. No single country can left out of it. So we need what we are talking about is the new world order. But the new world order is about working together. So it's not working for any of our kind of even on a regional or religious basis. But we're talking about a holistic approach to resolve all issues, between each country with a universal values. So when we need to provide totally integrated solution for what we have learned in the past. I mean, the past half century or even a century, especially in the past 20, 30 years. We are not lacking of any technologies nowadays. Well, there are many, many different solutions which the world has been doing. Even the Muslim community, everybody is doing a lot of good things. But how are we going to integrate them to make it powerful and impactful? And this is why the UN SGAP has adopted this and launched this Asia Pacific Green Deal with the Green Economic Zone. So we are talking about moving from principles, moving from problems that we have been discussing to actually practicing, okay? Looking into the best practices, because there's a lot of corporate champions who has been doing very successfully in achieving even the 17 SDGs. So the SDG is no longer just a goal, but it's a global movement thing that we have to do everything together. But actually, it's not just the government responsibility, but also the business community and the social community as well. So it's all in one that we have to look into, and then we work together. So there are many impactful solutions that has been created throughout the years. So I mean, this is what we have to deal with, especially nowadays when we're talking about climate change or food shortage, food problem, or human rights, all these things. But we can't handle it in a piecemeal manner nowadays. So when we plan, each and every countries, especially when we are talking about the Asia Pacific countries, actually we are also working with the Middle East countries and other around the world, other countries around the world, and we're talking about the same values, and certainly in the Asia Pacific region, we're talking about the Asian value. But we have our own traditional value that we can embrace, but then from there we move on how to achieve, and in an impactful way. So the solutions are many. The ESG that we have been talking about, this is the hottest topic around the world nowadays with the 17 SDG. So what we are UN SGAP is now doing is to integrate the ESG with the 17 SDG of how we can really work out, and that's why the Green Economic Zone is something that we have raised it, because we integrate all the successful business model and practices in one region where there are, incentive investment law that we can follow. So I think the business sector will work on its own if they knew the rule of the games. So I think what we are trying to do is like when we know what we like to do, with a higher purpose. The higher purpose is probably not just for economic growth. We are talking about economic justice, development justice that we are embracing, doing the good thing and the right thing at the right time. So it's no longer just, in a region or any countries are going to do. It's actually collectively. It's a collective effort for every people around the world if we want to protect ourselves. So it's the same theory like we talk about environment climate issue. We can't say that this is my region and I only look into my problem, but not and neglecting others. It's the same thing as the ocean waste is around the world. So we can't say, oh, I only clean my region. So I think it's the whole mindset change that the sustainability actually talks about the positive change and also profitability. So if you can't make good money, I mean, there's nothing wrong with making profit, but making profit with a higher purpose and meaning. So making happy money, you know, generating happy money and doing good things at the same time through economy of scale. So I think this is what in short, in a simple way, that this is what we are trying to promote. You know, a new business model where everybody, you know, especially the MSME, together with the large corporation and even the government sector, all sectors to work together. There are solutions, and we believe so, and we are going to introduce that in coming future. Thank you.
Albert, thank you so much. While you were articulating one thing particular that you said was the mindset change. And that mindset change is no more a luxury. I think that mindset change, if it wouldn't come, we all would become part of devastation directly or indirectly. To your point, Pakistan is contributing only 0.5% to greenhouse gases and carbon at this point of time. And the recent flood that has happened, it's not because the industries and the carbon footprint is very high. It is because globally that has happened. And because we are close to the glaciers, the impact is directly to us. So no one is safe and no one will remain safe unless that collaborative mindset that we all are speaking about, the mindset change, but the pace of it, I think, has to take a drastic change towards achieving whatever we want to achieve. So thank you for that. That brings me to my next speaker, Professor Andrew Davis. Andrew, thank you for being part of this panel. If we see so far, the theme of the conversation is whether you look at it from a religious perspective, whether you look at it from human perspective, whether you look at it from regulators' perspective, whether you look at it from individuals and community perspective, we all are talking the same language. It's about creating a narrative that addresses the needs in a particular country, community, and that value proposition is communicated in a more powerful manner. How do you see the religious ethos being a conduit of narrative? And do you think that there will be a strong receptivity if we convert these global concepts, which basically are part of each and every religion in the world, and if we start narrating the ESGs and the SDGs through the religious narratives, do you think there'll be a better uptake on institutional and community level and perhaps regulatory? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Faraz. Good morning to everybody from the UK. Peace be with you. It's a great honour to have the opportunity of speaking to you this morning. I'm sharing as a scholar of religion who especially engages with religion and public life, religion and politics. And I'm honoured and inspired to join the conversation. Mr. Albert said just a moment ago, the New World Order is about working together, and Christians and Muslims together account for 56% of the planet's population. So that's some 4.5 billion people spread out across the globe from diverse cultures and backgrounds and lived realities who find themselves facing challenges around sustainability. So what is the best way, as Faraz asked, to leverage that without instrumentalizing religion, without using it artificially as a tool, can we enlist people of faith as agents of change by engaging with their values and practices, the ones that are embedded within their rich and emotive religious traditions? Religion is so often cited as an obstacle or a hindrance in our attempts to change the world for the better. It gets a bad reputation, and especially in the West, especially in Europe, practicing a faith is sometimes equated to being regressive and resistant towards social change. Some religions are negatively stereotyped as being fundamentalist and archaic. That's an incredibly Eurocentric view, for starters, as well. It's demeaning, it's prejudicial, but it's also reductive, ineffective, and flawed. So I think what we need to do is develop an overarching theory of change for religious engagement that harnesses the real power of religious people towards making a positive impact. Islam has a massive amount to speak into how we should go about living in the world. It guides so many details of the lives of Muslim men and women. It inspires so many responses to the challenges that we face. And I believe we need a ground-up response that's led by the people that are most affected by the challenges that we wish to address, but is also holistic, merging the secular and the sacred in resolving social problems. You see, wherever we come from politically or geographically, building a flourishing society in every corner of the world is in everyone's interest. We all gain from a society which includes all perspectives, experiences, and talents, whether we're ideologically or pragmatically driven. Inclusion and diversity, leveraging everybody's capacity to intervene in some of these great social challenges, has massive economic, social, and cultural benefit for everybody. And yet, in just about every strategy for inclusion that I've ever come across globally, religion is the factor that's left out. Failing to take that into account leaves us battling inequality with both hands tied behind their back, especially in Muslim-majority countries. Faith communities provide significant social benefit to their community and to wider society. We need to harness that. And it's understandable, perhaps, that policymakers across the world default to what they know and where they can get access. They perhaps start with the larger established traditions. In the UK, it's understandable that civil servants just cross the Thames to Lambeth Palace and talk to the Church of England. I get that. It's easy. It's straightforward. But actually, those larger traditions don't always reflect the feelings of people on the ground. And there are some really important perspectives there. Any strategy that fails to bring a significant proportion of the more conservative religious communities on board will fail to fully engage those communities. It won't deliver its goals as comprehensively as it might. We have this rather horrible terminology in the UK about hard to reach communities. It's not that those communities are hard to reach at all. It's just that our traditional strategies for engaging with more conservative religious communities of whatever religion just don't make sense. We tend to talk to the liberal progressives and forget the fact that they are a tiny minority. So I'm not keen on religious literacy strategies. I don't think it helps policymakers to know the history of the doctrine of the Trinity or be able to recite the Shema or recount the 5 pillars or the 5 Ks. We need to understand the values that faith inspires and the obligations that it places upon its adherents. We need policy communities, agencies, and networks to take better account of religious communities and religious values. And faith communities do sometimes use those perspectives as an objection to social change, but they also have their own rights and responsibilities. Nobody's saying that faith should be given priority over every other factor, but there's no policy arena that isn't impacted by religion, and we can't afford to ignore faith as a factor. So in my remaining 60 seconds, 3 stages, 3 things that I think we need to do. First, I think we need to seek to understand and work within the worldview of the community that we're working with. We need to understand something of the complexity and nuance of each community's perspective. And that intra as well as inter-religious dialogue is absolutely crucial, as has been mentioned already. Secondly, we have to work with the cultural frameworks that define the community. The historic teachings of our faiths and contemporary social expectations are both very important here, but we need to realize too that religious leaders sometimes have more influence over their communities than political leaders do. Faith leaders can be important gatekeepers. But that doesn't mean that we can only talk to the faith leaders. We need to talk to the community, individual people of faith on the ground as well, and hear their voices. And finally, as we promote those underheard and underrepresented voices, as we identify the transformational opportunities within their stories, we can then leverage that tradition for genuine, positive social transformation. And yes, of course, there will be points of disagreement. Sometimes we'll identify key strategic leaders which will help the community work more effectively with other groups. Of course, there are theological and religious disagreements, but actually harnessing the values that inspire us all can make a massive difference in delivering concrete change on the ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is extremely insightful, and interestingly, the similar strands of thoughts and potential actions that Professor Dr. Din Shamsuddin shared earlier in the conversation. You talked about the overall theory of change that needs to kind of restructured and communicated in terms of a three-pronged strategy, which is first is seek to understand, second is to understand and integrate the cultural framework, and then leverage on it. And I think if you see the politics of the world, when it's time for referendums and elections across the world, religion is a fantastic tool to kind of create that vote banks. And then when it comes to actually decision-making time, faith is ostracized at the regulatory and policy level. So yes, I think there needs to be, I think the policy and the regulators need to understand the leverage that faith communities and you know, religions like Islam, Christianity, and many who bring on the table on social protection and social impact side of it as well, because that is actually resolving their problems as leadership, because the gap between the resources and what the challenges is just going in absolute opposite direction. So beyond the vote generation, I think understanding the ethos and leveraging the power of faith to create that social protection framework aligned with the regulators and policymakers is absolutely crucial. Thank you for this. This has been, I think that's a huge takeaway. There was a time, you know, in previous decades and generations when faith and ideologies and dreamers and poets and philosophers were the ones who actually dreamt about a world. I think we need to bring that back into core decision-making at the regulatory and policy level as well. That conversation brings me to the next speaker, Mr. Anar Salmanov. Mr. Salmanov, I'm very, very keen to hear from you and the rest of the audience, because the small and medium businesses are usually the recipients of disasters, and they are the ones who actually get destroyed very quickly. And for them to get regroup and you know develop independence again is very, very difficult, especially recently in the floods in Pakistan, where we've seen firsthand that MSMEs are absolutely destroyed, and they are usually the rock bed of the GDP, and be it from the food security point of view or for overall GDP contribution point of view. How do you see sustainability as a critical factor in making sure that this rock bed of any country, I mean, in your case, you're looking towards the Azerbaijan side, but the example of Azerbaijan, the goods that has happened and the challenge that you have experienced could be kind of shared, and the best practices could be learned. So over to you. Sustainability is a focus, but the impact of that towards the small and medium business communities, how do you see that transforming?
Thanks so much. As a representative of Muslim country, I will also start my speech saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Dear moderator, dear colleagues, dear friends, it's a great privilege for me and for our organization to attend this respectful forum. And I welcome all of you, and definitely think that we will have good results at the final stage of our discussion. What I'd like to say, the issues being discussed today are very important for every country, including Azerbaijan. I would like to bring to attention some figures. For example, one of our biggest successes in the last 10 years is that the poverty rate had dropped from 50 to 6%, while level of unemployment to 5%. And I think that this figure shows that the progress and development observed in Azerbaijan in recent years have a direct positive impact on the welfare of the people. And Azerbaijan is implementing large-scale projects, infrastructure projects, within the public-private partnership format and within the simple investment-related format. The implementation of these projects certainly leads to positive results, and one of our future plans, directly mentioned by Head of State, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, that the Azerbaijan in the coming years definitely should join to the rank of developed countries. And I think that within our country, we have all possibilities to reach this high aim. From the point of view of your question, what I'd like to say, it's well known that the role of small and medium enterprises in the economy of each country is exceptional. For example, in our country, we organize the activities of the small and medium businesses development agency in 5 main areas. The first one is ensuring a favorable business environment and protecting small and medium enterprises' interests. The second one is expanding of small and medium businesses' access to knowledge, skills, and innovations in order to maintain their institutional capacity building. The third one, the facilitating small and medium businesses' access to government and business services. And given the impact of the COVID pandemic, we have included elements such as digitalization and the green economy in our strategic agenda. Also, the Small and Medium Enterprises Improvement Agency has taken regular measures to further improve the efficiency of the businesses and investment climate in Azerbaijan. For example, on the latest report of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the policy index of Azerbaijan has improved on 9 of the 12 criteria. It's also very important, very important. What is necessary to guess? For example, in order to provide transparent and efficient services to entrepreneurs in one place to increase their satisfaction, the agency creates small and medium businesses houses. These houses were created throughout the territory of Azerbaijan. And for example, one of these houses has about 170 services at government agencies and about 100 services of 8 private companies. So we have such kind of one-shop mechanism in Azerbaijan. Since its inception, more than 35,000 services have been provided, of which 95% were government to business format and 5% were business to business services. And what's positive, the level of satisfaction with the services provided was 29%. As another area of our work, I would like to inform you that the support mechanisms and coordination measures provided to small and medium businesses, according to the criteria for determining the startup, approved by the relevant decision of the Cabinet of Ministers of Azerbaijan, our agency is issued a startup certificate to small and medium business entities. Another support mechanism, micro, small, and medium enterprises has started financing education, science, research, and support projects. Also, our agency supports the participation of small and medium businesses in various exhibitions and fairs. As part of the support, the small and medium businesses are expanding their sales opportunities and establishing new business relationships by presenting their products and services to a wide audience. It's also very important, bearing in mind the last COVID pandemic. In order to expand the sales opportunities of micro and small businesses, the particular portal, www.cobmarket.us, was created, and at present, small and medium businesses are enabled to create online stores and placed more than 800 products on this online market. And this portal provides a simple registration process for businesses, obtaining the necessary information on sales, and users can use a single payment system and delivery services. Also, close ties are being established with foreign partners to support small and medium businesses. Our staff has been represented at events and forums organized in a number of countries, and our cooperation with relevant agencies has been expanded. In this regard, in accordance with the, let's say, theme of the panel, I would like to note that Azerbaijan Investment and Culture Summit was organized by our agency and the Youth Forum of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Baku on October 27-29 last year. And the summit was attended by businessmen, investors, startups, and youth organizations from more than 30 countries. Also, in the capacity of Director of Public-Private Partnership Development Centers, I would like to mention that for the time being, we have the relevant legal and infrastructural institutional framework in Azerbaijan. Also, we have solid political, economic, financial, social position in Azerbaijan in order to attract investments from all over the world and to maintain and to guarantee their protection on the same level as in the case of our national investment policy. So,
thank you so much. I think it was a great overview of how the small and medium enterprises in Azerbaijan are flourishing. And I think it's a lot to do with the government's sincere approach and understanding of the need of the sector, and then creating opportunities for them to actually expand their products and resources and whatever they're selling. So thank you for that. I would like to go to my last panelist, who is definitely not the least, Dr. Abdul Halim Hussain. Mr. Hussain, you're the Vice President of the National Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Malaysia. Yes. Malaysia's economic success story is something that we are extremely proud of as a brother Islamic country. And it is a model that I think a lot of the world look towards. And I would like to kind of break this particular question into two parts vis-a-vis you. What is that core sustainability range of ethos that the Malaysian businesses have from the Islamic point of view that has kind of created a global impact? And secondly, this emergence of ESG regulatory space where reporting on environment, social, and governance is becoming extremely important, especially for export-oriented countries. Like in Europe now, if you're exporting textiles to them and you do not comply by the global standards of EU taxonomy, your exports will be reduced. So in this changing dynamics of ESG emergence and its reporting, how is the Malaysian businesses are kind of geared? And before that, if you can share that so far, that what is that ethos, that Islamic ethos of sustainability that are a very strong part of the business community of Malaysia? Thank you so much.
Thank you for us. Assalamualaikum dan good afternoon, everybody. I'm here on behalf of the National Chamber of Commerce. I'm the Vice President of National Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also one of the 5 founding members of NCCIM, of which Malay Chamber of Commerce is one of the founding members. And as President of the Malay Chamber of Commerce, we are trying our level best to push our members to go beyond borders to capture Muslim markets and to be global champions. However, this is of course a lot easier said than done. About your 2 questions, sustainability of Malaysian business ethos from Islamic to global, that is we have in Malaysia, it is basically revolve around halal, the halal concept, of which the halal and thayyiban is the future of the food industries and future of the other industries that involve Muslims and non-Muslim as well. This is because during the Umar al-Khattab when he became the leader of the Muslims during the earlier part of the Muslim era, he promoted no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, and all the 17 MSG that we have written in the MSG. So this is the issues that we Muslims need to comply with and to be strong with, of which we need to be examples examples to the rest of the world. The next question, reporting of ESG has been a very good indicators and is very taken seriously by the government as well. In Bursa Malaysia, or the Bursa Malaysia's initiative about the ESG, every companies that listed into Bursa Malaysia has to be having an ESG reporting. So this is a huge steps because a lot of people do not know what is ESG, and a lot of people talk about ESG, but there's no there is no what we call a clear indicators that we can follow and we can imitate to do the ESGs, other than the one that we have thought and we think that it should be. So ESG should be promoted all over the world with a specific indicators of which people will understand and will know and will be able to compare from one country to each other. Because when a country or a company in Malaysia claims that they have been complying with ESG, what is ESG for them? And to what compliance that they have done? Whether the carbon emission that they have is within 50% or within 0%. So this is very important for us. And now we are discussing on how to get every company to adhere to a standard of which understood by everybody. So this is the situation that happening in Malaysia, and we hope that other countries will follow suit as well, especially those who are exporting to the Europe and US that have been promoting the ESG. However, to my personal opinion, ESG has been used by the countries of the Europe and the US to have the non-tariff barrier for us. Because, for example, one of the example is if you destroy 0.4 hectares of land to plant vegetables, you are not to allow to export to the European countries because you destroy our jungle. So 0.4 hectares is very small, and every Malaysian that has land is subject to that. So if this happen, then there will be no further development to Malaysia or Indonesia or anywhere else. So this is the issues that we need to address, and we need to get the explanation correctly happen to the countries in the Europe and the US on how we do things in Malaysia. Thank you.
Mr. Hussain, thank you. I mean, I was joyfully smiling at your comments because you're absolutely right. The fact is that ESG and its different kind of matrices are, and there's a huge worldwide view that, you know, the industrious nations have got a different leverage because they have achieved that success in the past, in the post-World War II era, and they have become who have they become. But the existing nations who are actually in that growth trajectory are subjected to norms that creates an unfair ground for them to kind of create with the same pace of growth. So you're absolutely right. Gentlemen, you guys have been absolutely phenomenal. This session has been extremely insightful personally for me, and I hope for the audiences as well. There were four critical themes that came out of it. One is the theme of collaboration. I mean, that is an absolute cornerstone of anything that moves forward. Trade as another critical pillar that needs to kind of create inter-country, inter-OIC, and OIC with the wider world. Two very, very important factors which have been really ignored is the mindset change and the faith integration into the sustainability narratives and sustainability practices by the New World Order. So I think a conversation in which faith communities and intellectuals, along with the regulators of these concepts of SDGs and ESGs and sustainability impact investment, needs to start having a conversation to understand the leverages that are easily achievable. We have had fantastic stories from South Africa, Azerbaijan, United Kingdom, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia. And I think just within this 60, 70 minutes of conversation, there are ideas that are emerging that can actually turn into practices. For example, just one is that if we can create these SDG, ESG impact through the faith narratives and create the value propositions for the regulators, I think that in itself is extremely, extremely powerful. Second, like you rightly said, Mr. Hussain, that I think if OIC can actually create ESG paradigms that are conducive to Islamic economy and are conducive to the wider world from the ethos and strengths and capabilities of the Islamic countries, I think that in itself would transform the space of ESG, which is just a conduit, which is a concept, which is a practice, but there are practices that has been there for thousands of years. And I think we need to kind of create a paradigm, a platform that needs to actually bring both of these thought processes and make them coexist. It has been an absolute privilege to listen to each one of you. And thank you for this conversation. And I hope that the audiences have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Thank you so much.